Okay, so thanks for coming on today, Raven. So we're going to get straight into it. And so we were reading, we did a little bit of looking over your podcast and a bit of reading of your description of your podcast prior to meeting with you today. And we came across this quote that you've got in your, is it in your Buzzsprout? Authentic conversations with real people about crafting a better, more egalitarian world. So we'd just like to know, how do you picture a more egalitarian world?
Damn, you're hitting me hard right off the bat with all right, I will let's go for it. Let's dig into that. So and I want to say first off too that I think it's really important to maintain that open mind always, and to always be aware of like echo chambers. And so I'm like nestled in, I'm a member of the Alt-Media United Podcast Collective, and I would say I'm a part of like what's referred to as the truth community. But that's not, I'm also a part of a greater society. Mi Amor is, she's mestiza, and she comes, and I'm like nestled into South Phoenix. I'm nestled into like the Mexican American community. And so it's like, we're all a part of, there's overlapping circles. And that's where the egalitarianism aspect comes into, is where can we find ways to like overlap all the circles? So for example, I'll give you like an example of how people they'd take the term egalitarianism and they would say different things about it. I get fired up like anytime anyone starts making comments, and there's a lot of drama right now in the US about the border and like immigration, and people have all sorts of ideas about it. And this is mi familia. So I get fired up when people start talking about like anything with, we need to limit this. We need to limit this immigration, or limit this or that, or they're taking over or something like that. Because first off, there's a lot of misunderstandings about what's going on at the border. And I will get back to the egalitarian concept, but it's all going to fold in together. There's a lot of misunderstandings about what's going on at the border. It's not that you have like, because in my experience and in my life and with mi familia, like some of the best people that I know in existence are migrants or have migrated here. And, then there's the documentation aspect, and like so I always say like judge people on the content of their character, not the content of their documents. I think that's like an important thing to keep in mind. And there's fuckery at the border, but it doesn't have to do with like one group trying to like take over or come over. The fuckery, this is my opinion now, this is speculation, but I have some pretty good sources that back this up. The fuckery is systematic attempt to destabilize the US. And so you have, and I just call it the fuckery because Kyle at the NSA is probably fucking listening to this conversation anyway, but I just call it I call it the fuckery anyway. Like there's an effort people are being ushered in through the border, like systematically by the fuckery. And then you have just like good people, and some of the most beautiful people in the world, in my humble opinion, from Latin America, that are just trying to seek a better life, because the fuckery has interfered with their countries, like whether it be Mexico or Central America, the fuckery is like interfering with these countries, and so they're just seeking a better life. So, and I know that obviously these are huge, vast generalizations, and there's all sorts of people from all sorts that, you start talking about stuff, it breaks down. But I think the general idea is, when we get to the idea of egalitarianism, it's like, how do we all figure out a way to get along together and judge each other based on the content of our character, and not based on, for example, the content of our documents, or for example, the color of our skin, or for example, what religion we ascribe to. It's like, it is a spiritual concept. I don't know how else to put it. And it requires like a real, like, the collective consciousness just has to evolve to be able to accommodate the idea of egalitarianism. Because certain people are going to say, and am I talking too much, by the way? I can give you guys a chance to chime in. Okay. So certain people are going to say to me, they're going to be like, well, what about the resources? You have all these people migrating here and there's not enough first off, I just don't think that's true. I think there is enough because I've worked in food service my whole life, and we're just throwing out food constantly. So there's constantly food being thrown away. And, like I just see how, especially when I go down to Mexico, like just how different it is, like how people utilize the resources, in my humble opinion, better. They just use what they have better. There's a lot of like waste in the empire where people just feel like they can just like throw this away and throw that away. Yeah. My neighbor is Reynaldo. He's Cuban, and he grew up in Cuba during the special period when after the Soviet Union collapsed, and they lost like 98% of their trading partners. Cuba did, like overnight pretty much. And so he talks about how like they had to take what was on the island and they just had to basically like make it work. Like whatever was there, they had to make that shit work. And he's one of the most like skilled fabricators, machinists, mechanics that I've ever met, because he just knows how to like he made me a ball and chain. He literally, like, I was like, can you make me a ball and chain? He's like, yes. And he just straight up made it for me. I can show it to you guys later. And he just fabricated it, and he did it like perfectly. It's like this perfect, amazing device. And, I gave him the money that I could. I'm like, I wish I could give you more. And then I found 2 brake pads. I just like was getting gas, and I just found 2 brand new brake pads, like right next to my car. So I was able to, but it's like, there's a different way of doing things. Like we don't have to it doesn't always have to be so incredibly transactional and severe. Like there can be like a way of exchange, barter, like reimagining value. And I think that I've rambled long enough, so I'm going to let you guys throw me. What are your thoughts on all that stuff I just said?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, in like the empire, the Western world, or whatever you want to call it, we are very, very wasteful. Like you can see how the way like if we consume a chicken, for example, everybody was supposed to eat chicken breast, but there's so many different parts of the chicken that just end up going to waste or being thrown away, or I don't know what to do with it. But everyone just seems to buy chicken breast, and I don't know what's happened to the rest of the chicken.
Yes.
But that's like one example.
Yes.
Whereas I did a bit of traveling in Southeast Asia when I was 19, 20. And they literally eat everything and every part of the animal. Like they'll eat the chicken feet, they'll eat everything. And it just makes you think, like, what happened? Why have we gone down this like sort of path, whereas other nations are so much more what's the word? Resourceful and work together and make sure everyone's fed, and it doesn't matter whether you're eating a chicken breast or the chicken feet, everybody gets a piece.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good point. It's and I would argue that it's systematic in a way. Like we've been systematic. The people, the working stiffs, have been kind of like systematically conditioned to not see the entire chicken as usable, and to just see the breast in this like pre-wrap thing, and you just want the breast because back in the day, like you would eat like, so this is a joke, but it's true. Like whatever, I'm just going to be real with you guys. I do like a little bit of astral projection and stuff like that. And I've had like some past life memories and stuff. And what I'm designed to do is to be in a cave around a fire with some woolly mammoth meat with like my people. And we're just friggin' surviving. And it's like, back in that time, like you use the entire chicken, like every little ounce of that chicken. You can use the sinews for like ropes or stuff like that. You even would chew on the bones and just chew them until you can eat them, because they have there's good nutrients there for your collagen and stuff like that. So that's been lost, like, and that's a real loss. And it's, in my humble opinion, it's like a systematic effort to weaken the people, in my humble opinion.
Well, it makes sense from a perspective of like the supermarket has your chicken breast there. You don't need your community to go and eat. All you need to do is work, go and pay the supermarket, whoever the big corporation that owns the supermarket, pay them for your chicken and go back home and cook your chicken, and you're done. Like you don't need a community around you to help you eat or to help you do anything, because you can just do everything yourself. Or they've set it up in a system where you are able to do everything yourself, and it doesn't matter about anything else. Like I could,
Right.
and I do. I work from home, so I could sit at my desk all day and just earn money, order Uber Eats to my door. I don't have to leave this position I'm in now. Just go and pick my food up at the door and stay here. Entertainment on tap, work, everything. Like, what else? Like,
Yeah.
there is no, for me, for basic survival, there's no need for me to really have anyone else around me. That's how it's been set up. The system's been set up like that.
Absolutely. That feeds into the whole 15-minute city thing
Mm.
and kind of like atomizing the people. And because I think that the fuckery is kind of afraid of like people really coming together in a big way, you know? So they want to keep us kind of like feeling like we're isolated and yeah, you got everything you need. You'll own nothing and be happy.
Yeah.
You know, just if you need to wash your clothes, like rent a fucking drone to like take your clothes to the
Yeah.
washer and then it'll drop it back off. Like, I think that the fuckery is afraid of, to be honest, I feel like the fuckery is afraid of the human body, like the human spirit, the human organism, like waking up to our inherent power, because we do have a lot of power, like not just as masses, but as individuals. And I've been having a lot of like realizations about how there's this beauty of, because people in the US, especially, I don't know how it is in the UK, but in the US, there's like a lot of people get all sorts of upset when you start talking about collective action of any kind because they start screaming at you about Mao and Stalin. And you're like, yo, I'm not talking about Mao and Stalin. I'm just talking about like working together to do, I'm just talking about being part of a community. But
Yeah.
there's a sacred tension there between the individualism and then working as part of a community. We don't even have to use the word collective because people get so triggered by it, like just being part of a community. So the individual is important though, like our being able to foster our individual quirks, our creativity, our personality, our likes, dislikes, like all that stuff is essential, because otherwise like nature likes biodiversity, and if you have a bunch of individual nodes that are all identical, then that body is going to become sick, kind of like how with monocropping or whatever like that. It when you have all the same corn with all the same genetics, then if you have one beetle that fucks up that corn, then like you're done. Whereas if you have all sorts of different varieties of corn, then they can kind of work together and they can help each other out and they can fight off a beetle, you know,
Yeah.
type thing.
When you're talking about the border earlier, also
Yeah, let's talk about the border. It's a juicy topic.
yeah, because it's also juicy from our sort of side of the pond as well, because it's
Yeah.
constantly being spoken about.
Yeah.
What is the problem with what do you think the problem is with the border? Just as sort of out there as that, as broad as you can go.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate you giving me that latitude. I appreciate that question. Thank you. And I will say that this is Speculation Island, so I'm going to
Yeah.
Speculation
Yeah.
Island. But I will also say that I have some sources. I have some pretty decent sources, but I'll leave it there.
Mhm.
So what I think is happening at the border is I think that there is an effort. I think that the working stiffs, the people of the U.S. empire, are under attack, under assault, and we're under psychological war assault. We're being propagandized. We're being poisoned. I see shit all the time in the barrio. I live in the barrio. I see the shit being in the sky. They're spraying stuff all the time. There was a while where I could hardly even record my podcast without helicopters flying overhead. I'm not exaggerating. On one of my podcasts, I say in the intro, I'm like, you can hear the helicopter, because I'm literally recording and there's a helicopter fucking circling my shit. Like, it's mental. And more people keep ending up on the streets. And it's people that you would consider to be middle-class people. Like, you know, rich people in the suburbs will be like, oh, people end up on the streets because they have drug problems and they're crazy. It's like, bitch, we all have drug problems and we're all crazy. Like, it's just a matter of like, do you have enough money? Frog skins, I call it the American dollar. I call them frog skins, to shout out to Lame Deer. He wrote this amazing book, Lame Deer, Seeker of Visions. He was a Lakota medicine man. Anyway, it's a matter of whether you have enough fucking frog skins to keep a roof over your head or not. That is the matter. And so we're being under attack economically, because the inflation is so mental now, to where like I literally consume less Like I consume less calories. I live off, to be honest with you guys right now, like I live off peanut butter and honey. And then mi amor will come and bring me bison, sometimes in sirloin steak, and we'll cook it up in cilantro, do it proper Mexican style, pan seared with like some, you squeeze the orange on it. Do you guys ever try that? Do you guys eat meat?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. The Mexican cuisine it's been such a game changer for me in so many ways. And so, yeah, you want to pan sear it, and then you squeeze the citrus on it while it's being cooked. You squeeze the citrus and then a tiny little bit of apple cider vinegar, just a tiny little bit. And you season it obviously too with all the seasonings that you like. I like to mix tarragon with Mexican spices. So it's like a little bit of a mezcla, anyway, I could talk about this forever because it's just so good. But yeah, mi amor is like my lifeline. Like I would be fucking probably, I don't know where I would be without mi amor. So I just want to give her a shout out too. Anyways, what the fuck are we talking about again? Oh, the border. So what's happening at the border, in my humble opinion, is that it's part of a hybrid war against the American people. And the reason why they're doing this hybrid war against the American people is because the fuckery is fucking terrified of the American people, because we're all fucking strapped. So all of us are strapped. There's more guns than there are people here. Like literally, I think it's like by quite a lot. I think it's like something like there's like 4 times as many guns as there are citizens or something. And that sounds about right, because I live in Arizona. When you drive into Arizona, like when you cross the state line, they're like, "Welcome to Arizona. Here's a handgun." Like it's ridiculous. Like this state is ridiculous. They have Second Amendment rallies, because I live just south of the Capitol building.
Okay.
And they have like Second Amendment rallies where you just have dudes with ARs walking around, and there'll be like 200 dudes with ARs, and then you'll see the cops, and there'll be like 6 cops with handguns, and the cops are just like looking around like, well, I hope shit doesn't pop off right now, because we're fucked. Like this is but typically they're pretty cool, because people are just trying to be, we're just exercising. We have so few rights left. Rights left. Our Bill of Rights is like fucking piece of paper that the ruling class is wiping their ass with all the time. So the people are like, hey, we at least have the Second Amendment. We have the right to bear arms. So the fuckery is really kind of scared of the American people, because we're all strapped. So there's this hybrid war to like systematically, in my opinion, weaken and divide and destabilize. I think that is the key word. So just like the US empire does abroad, like anything that empires do abroad, they're going to come and do on their own people, especially when they're collapsing. And it seems to me like we're in the collapsing period. It looks to me anyways. I don't know. I could be wrong. Everything could be great with the empire, but it looks to me like shit's haywire. And so then when the empire starts to collapse, they start to turn their shit inward. And so just like how the empire destabilizes other countries, there's an effort to destabilize the US domestically. So the border there's people being ushered in from all around the world. So I've heard a lot of people from Central Asia. I've heard that people from China, all around the world. And they are there's like back channels. So it's all like, this is all like low key. There's like back channel things where it's like, okay, here, you go here, talk to this guy, or give them this document, do this, do that. And I don't like RFK at all anymore. RFK can fucking suck a dick as far as I'm concerned. But RFK did that little video at the border where he like showed the people just walking in.
Oh yeah.
Being ushered in. Do you remember that? Yeah. And like, that is kind of how it is under certain circumstances, where you have people just being like ushered in. And so this is a juicy little piece of tidbit for you guys. And this is Speculation Island. And this is from this is a trusted source. Apparently, these people are being taken into the mountains. Some of these folks that are being ushered in, they're being taken into the mountains and they're being trained in guerrilla warfare. So we can all ask ourselves, why that would be happening. And even like people that I know that are like very courageous people are scared about that, because it's kind of fucking terrifying. Because especially if you have like Nazis, like if they're collecting Nazis from everywhere, because we know that NATO stands for the Nazi Assistance and Transportation Organization. That's what NATO really stands for. So if they're collecting people, say, that have like more like Nazi ideology, I don't know. I hope that's not true. I really hope that's not the case. But a long time ago, I've had to come to terms with the fact that I am a Viking. I'm a Viking at heart. My ancestry is Russian and Finnish, and I might have to go to Valhalla this life. I might have to die in battle. It's just, I've just had to come to I've had to come to terms with that shit.
When you say they're training them in guerrilla warfare, it kind of so over here we're experiencing a lot of illegal immigration as well, which I know sounds a bit crazy because we're on an island. But there's boats that are coming across the English Channel. So they're coming out of France into the UK over the English Channel. And they're holding these people in what used to be hotels, but now they just seem to be like refugee camps. People that live close by to these hotels are saying that these people that are living in the hotels are all young military-age men. So people are saying, where are all the families, where are all the vulnerable women and children? So when you said that, it sort of made me think, is a similar thing happening in the UK that's happening in America? Perhaps it's happening all over Europe as well.
It wouldn't surprise me at all. It would not surprise me at all. And the other thing I'll say too is that the migration's also being weaponized by the fuckery to destabilize in other ways too, because there's so like Chicago. I'm from Chicago. I don't live there anymore, but Chicago is a very segregated city, and it's like there's the south and west side, and then there's like the north side, and it's I mean, it's not as segregated as people say. Like if you go to the north side, it's pretty diverse, but like the southwest side is pretty rough. Like in high school, I used to go there to get drugs, and like I would be the only cracker around. Like it's if you go and like run your mouth off, like it's not going to end well for you type thing. And there's even some neighborhoods where the cops like don't go because it's like they'll get shot. Like so it's hard. It is like it's real, but it's also just people are people and they're just trying to survive. Like that's what always gets missed when people talk about like dangerous neighborhoods. It's like, well, are you acting idiotic? Are you being an asshole? Are you being racist? Are you running your mouth off? Are you, how are you behaving? Like, have you gone there and just hung out? Like I used to go there as a cracker and get drugs and hang out and leave, and everything was fine because I'm not like running my mouth and being an asshole. I just think that gets missed sometimes. But anyways, there's a park that apparently they were putting like a lot of recently migrated people from Latin America. They were like inserting them on, just putting them on this. It's not just a park, but a community center. So it was like a heavily utilized community center on the south side, utilized by people of color in Chicago. And they were putting the migrants there specifically, which then caused all this tension. So are you guys familiar with the strategy of tension? It's like Operation Gladio and that whole shit that happened. Might be too much to get into right now, but let me just finish this and then. Well, okay, it kind of is important. So this strategy of tension basically was after World War II, the NATO left like a stand behind army of like covert agents to cultivate terror attacks, like in, for example, Italy. And then they blamed it on the left. They said it was like the Red Brigades, quote unquote, the Red Brigades that were committing these terror attacks, but it was to brand the left as like evil, like that they would attack their own people, so that they would not get elected. Because after World War II, and I'm not an ism no more. Isms make schisms, as far as I'm concerned. So I'm not trying to do isms right now, and I love my libertarian brothers and sisters, and I'm not trying to trigger anybody because we just need to come together right now. But at that time, after World War II, the communists or whatever were actually kind of popular because they were fighting. They were in the front lines against the Nazis. And so in order to prevent the communists from getting elected, they left this stand behind covert army to commit terror attacks and then blame it on the communists. And that was called Operation Gladio. And that's part of this greater thing called the strategy of tension. And nowadays, the strategy of tension is still in place, but they blame it on like climate change, for example, instead of communism. Like they'll there'll be a tropical storm off the coast of Acapulco that will magically become a Category 5 hurricane and like completely destroy Acapulco. And rather than being like, hey, maybe they have like weather, maybe they're able to do geoengineering, and maybe this was some directed energy fucking bullshit. Instead, they're like, no, it's climate change. It's that's what happens with climate change. So it's climate change's problem. So sorry about that. And that's why you have to have a 15-minute city, and that's why you can't eat meat and all this kind of shit. But I apologize. I completely lost my train of thought. Were we still we were talking about the parallels between the migration in the UK and the migration in the US and how it's being used to like destabilize, right?
You're talking about Southside Chicago and
the parks.
The planted people there.
Oh, right. Thank you. Yeah. So that was part of the strategy of tension. That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
How migration is being utilized as part of a strategy of tension to destabilize. Because when they put all these beautiful migrants, mi familia, I love the migrants from Latin America. I mean, I know there's some cartel shit and stuff like that, but a lot of the cartel stuff is being manipulated by the fuckery here, you know? So anyways, they put these migrants in this community center, and then it caused all this tension between the people of color in Chicago that utilized that community center and then the recently arrived migrants. And that's what they want. They want that tension, because what they don't want is the people of color and the recently arrived migrants coming together,
right,
and maybe like doing some actions, you know, or even just supporting one another. They don't want that. They want the tension. So it's like, that's where people have to really like use their heads. And I just really beg everyone to just judge people based on the content of their character and not the content of their documents right now, because I just ask people to do that out of respect for me and mi familia, because it's like important.
Yeah, it's super important, but it's difficult, and I understand for your average person who just go to work, then come home, watch TV. It's hard for them to understand that, because they're getting so manipulated, they're getting so brainwashed. They get brainwashed whilst they're at work with all of these sort of protocols that get put into place, or if they don't follow them, they'll get fired. That's a form of brainwashing. Then they get home and flick on the TV, and they're just filled with complete shit into their brain. And then they go back to work, and they're doing the same thing again and again and again. Add into that, they probably listen to the news on the way to work. They probably listen to the news when they get back from work. And then they're being manipulated when they think they're shutting off to watch normal Hollywood movies or TV shows. They're just stuck in this sort of endless rut of being brainwashed. And then when they go out and do see these people that are a different color, they just automatically hate them, because that's what they've been wired up to do.
It's really sad, and it's very true that the people in the West are like some of the most propagandized people in the history of the world. And in my humble opinion, this is speculation island, but I think that they're utilizing very sophisticated methods to propagandize. I think that DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, they have all these other ARPAs now. There's like an intelligence ARPA, there's a health ARPA. Like DARPA has become this monster, which is just breeding other monsters. And these are black box, fucking endless budget projects where they can experiment with all sorts of whack shit. And I think they're looking into like very sophisticated neurolinguistic programming, subliminal messaging, hypnosis. I even think they're utilizing light code, because like when the only time I see like mainstream media is when I'm at the gym on the stair climber and I look at the television screens that are blaring at me, and like it makes me real anxious. It makes me real anxious, especially like some of these advertisements that come through, the flashing images and stuff like that. I feel like I'm subjecting myself to some dark shit that I don't want. And like every other advertisement is a fucking pill. And then it's like pictures of flowers and sunshines and grandmas. And then they're like, this medication is going to cause your stomach to bleed out and it's going to cause your dick to fall off. It's like, wait, what? You just showed me a picture of flowers and grandmas. Now you're telling me my dick's going to fall off. What the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely in the US, I think your advertisement laws or regulations are a lot different to what ours are over here. And I've seen the US advertisements, and they are scary to watch.
Truly. I think New Zealand is the other country, that fucking intelligence agency sandbox hellhole that, I mean, the Maori people are fucking powerful. So I'm not trying to talk shit. And I know it's a beautiful place. New Zealand is a beautiful place, but that fucking, the people who have the powers that be at New Zealand are like scary people. Yeah. And I think they're the only other country that allows for pharmaceutical advertisements.
Yeah, I think it is. New Zealand and the US.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah, which is crazy.
So that shows like.
Sorry, go on.
You go.
Yeah, because when you're watching sport, it will come up saying the score is brought to you by Pfizer.
Right, exactly.
And you're just like, what does that even mean? Like, how does that even work?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's almost farcical if it weren't so tragic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there weren't so many people like having their lives fucked up. And you know what? I want to tell you guys, I'm very proud of myself. I managed to wean myself off of pharmaceutical products.
Oh, nice.
I have been taking, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was hard. I was taking Wellbutrin for like a long ass time, like 6 years. Cause I moved here in 2016. I was living on the Big Island of Hawaii. And I moved here and then promptly got divorced. And I was like depressed and lonely. And I was like, well, I'm going to go to a counselor because that's what you're supposed to do. And then the counselor's like, take this thing called Wellbutrin. And so it did actually like help me. So I'm not trying to talk
drug,
shit.
Sorry, Raven.
What was it?
What's that drug?
Wellbutrin is it's a mood stabilizer.
Okay.
It's a mood stabilizer. I think it's the Wellbutrin. It's also known as bupropion.
Okay.
I think bupropion is like the scientific name, and then Wellbutrin is the brand or something like that. But yeah, so it did help me, I guess, because I managed to pull myself out of my depression. But I also noticed after taking, and this is the God's truth, after taking this Wellbutrin, I noticed like lumps on my body. Like I had a lump. I started getting lumps on my body. Like I got 3, 1, and then 2, and then a third. And I'm like, I don't know what's causing the lumps. It could be anything, but I did just add this to my regimen.
Yeah.
And I do wonder, like the shit that they put in there, like the extracurricular shit besides the active ingredient. Like, what is this? Like, I can't trust this thing. I have no idea where it came from. I'm putting it into my sacred temple of my body. And so I just decided to wean myself off. And I want to say that the lumps are like smaller now. So continue to send me good energy that they continue to get smaller. And I also want to give a shout out to the fungal kingdom, because mushrooms really helped me to wean myself off of the Wellbutrin. And I'm a big proponent of microdosing. I really am, because for me anyway, this is not health advice, everyone, but for me, my personal experience is that with microdosing, it helped me to reconnect with the earth, like the earth spirit. And it helped me to then reconnect with my own self on a deep way. And then I was able to like flip the switch in my head of like, okay, I don't need this pill. I don't need this pill. And I managed to do it. But I know that this is a very delicate thing, and like people have to be super duper careful when they wean themselves off of these types of things, because it's hectic. Like it can be very hectic. But yeah.
How long have you been? Well, congratulations, by the way, on getting off it.
Yeah,
that's great news.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys.
How long have you been off it for?
I've been off it now for 3 weeks.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, 3 weeks. And there have been some days where I felt like, oh, I'm depressed. But I've managed to like work through it, and I feel like I'm done with it now. I feel like I'm done with it. So
yeah, well done, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Yeah. So you mentioned microdosing. I feel like you've come on at the right time, because it's something I'm thinking about at the moment. So I'll just explain a bit of background. So at the start of this year, me and Cam, we stopped drinking, stopped taking any drugs recreationally, and we've literally had like a fully sober year. So over this year, I've just been like contemplating where can drugs fit into my life, if they do have a place in my life. And I've never really experimented with psychedelics, but one thing, we had a guest on about 3-4 months ago, and he mentioned microdosing. And I thought, actually, microdosing could be something that enhances me rather than enhances me and makes me feel more connected rather than numbs me and makes me feel like I'm just escaping reality. So I was just wondering, like, how do you microdose? Like, what is the protocol? Like, how do you make it work?
Yeah, for sure. This is a fun topic. So I want to give a shout out first off to the reason why we have what are referred to as the magic mushrooms, which is really I prefer the term flesh of the gods, because that's more of kind of what the indigenous people called it. And it comes from the Mazateca people. A lot of people don't know this about the mushrooms. It comes from the Mazateca people, and it's a group of people in Mexico. Because in my humble opinion, Mexico is God's country, and I will die on that hill, and I might have to. In the northern part of Oaxaca, there's a province, the Mazateca people, and that's where the magic mushroom or the flesh of the gods comes from. And there's a lot of different varieties of the flesh of the gods. It's not just one, which this might be obvious to some listeners, but the psilocybe cubensis, I think, is the one that's like a lot of time people think of when they think of the magic mushrooms, like flesh of the gods. But there's a bunch of different varieties, and I might be slightly misspeaking right now as well, because I think there might be some varieties that come from Hawaii too, and there might be some varieties from other parts of the world. So I don't want to overspeak my bounds. I just know that psilocybe cubensis comes from the Mazateca people, which is this beautiful province north of Oaxaca. And it's like it's a cloud forests and this beautiful area. I haven't been there myself, but I'm dreaming of going eventually. And so there was this amazing medicine woman, Maria Sabina, and she would utilize the mushrooms for like spiritual communion and being able to like speak with our ancestors and all that kind of stuff. And then this white man came, I think his name was G. Gordon Wasson. And I can't recall the exact year that this happened, but I want to say it was like the 70s or something like that. 60s, maybe the 60s, or maybe even the 50s. This white man came down and he found out about this shit. And so he was like, I want to have this experience. And so she was like, okay. And she gave him this beautiful experience. I believe it's called a velada, which I believe is something like the candle ceremony or something like that. Because la vela is the candle. And so he had an experience where he talked to his dead mom, his recently deceased mother, and it like moved him to his core. And then he's like, okay, now I want like the world to experience this. And so all of a sudden, like overnight, he had a connection, I think, with Time Magazine, which has a connection with the fuckery, with the 3-letter agencies and all this kind of stuff. And it was like overnight, it was like this little province and this beautiful woman named Maria Sabina. They became like celebrities, and all these hippies started flocking to the Mazateca people, and everyone wanted the mushroom, and it kind of got really hectic. And eventually what happened is the Mexican government, and I don't know exactly what year this was, but the Mexican government like went to Mazateca and was like, told the hippies they had to leave because it was like too much. They're like, y'all are too much. You're cramping the style of these people and y'all have to leave. And there's pictures, you can find them on the interwebs, of like the Mexican government like escorting hippies out of the Mazateca region because they were just cramping the style too much. But anyways, so that's kind of a little bit of the background of like where these beautiful mushrooms like emerge from. And I just think it's important to like, it's important to respect that and give a shout out to like the Mazateca people that kind of like held on to the medicine and nurtured the medicine for so long. And so anyway, now the cat's out of the bag. And in terms of how you actually microdose, there's a ton of different ways of doing it. So I want to make that clear. There's a lot of different ways. But sometimes when there's so many different ways of doing something, I feel like you can get lost in like all the options. I feel like that's something that happens. So I'm just going to tell you my way of doing it. But I just want to make it clear that like there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. My way of doing it is very simple because I'm a dim-witted podcaster and I like to keep shit simple. And what I do is I literally just, you have the mushroom. So it's got the stem and the cap. The cap is more potent than the stem. as a general rule.
Yeah.
The cap is more potent than the stem.
Mhm.
And so I just will nibble. I'll just take a little nibble, like depending on what I'm doing that day. So if like, let's say have to go file papers at the courthouse, that's pretty serious business. So I don't want to be like tripping balls or even like that. I don't really want to be feeling the mushrooms that much while I'm doing that. So I'll just have like a nibble of a stem. I'll have a nibble of a stem for that. And what that does is it turns up the dial on my consciousness so that I'm more aware, but I don't feel like I'm necessarily tripping. You might feel a little bit of like a little something, but it's very subtle. It just kind of like turns up the volume on your awareness so that you're more aware of your surroundings. You're more aware of like what's going on. Your intuition is a little bit more locked in. And then if I'm going to practice martial arts with my soul sister, Mona, she used to be a semi-pro Muay Thai fighter. And so mi amor y yo, we go over there for fight class and she teaches us how to throw bows and shit like that. When you're doing that type of work, I would recommend having some of the cap. Okay. Like have a nibble of the cap. And for the precise amount, I would say like maybe like half the size of a dime. You guys don't have dimes. Half the size of a penny, or maybe 3/4 of the size of a penny. Okay. Of a cap. And then what you got to do is you got to keep it under your tongue. You have to like really, you don't just want to swallow it and you want to chew it. I think it tastes fine. I think it just tastes like the earth. And then you chew it and you keep it under your tongue for at least like 30 seconds. And that's going to allow all the beneficial alkaloids, not just the psilocybin, but the other beneficial alkaloids to like enter through your capillaries and get all through your body. And then the reason why I like to do that before practicing martial arts is because now you're feeling it a little bit more, but you're not fucked up. You're just kind of feeling like you're feeling your oats. Like it'll give you like a little bit of energy and more awareness, more body awareness, and it won't impact your memory. So like when you learn a new move, you'll be able to remember the move, but you'll just, it kind of like locks you in to existence, I guess, for lack of a better word. And then, so that's kind of how I go about microdosing. But other people they'll do capsules where they grind it up into powder and they make the capsules. But for me, I don't have the time or money for that to deal with the capsules and the capsule maker. So I just go real straightforward and just nibble what I want, like depending on what I'm doing.
So how sort of many days in a row would you microdose before you would stop doing it for a certain?
I think a good practice is to take like 2 or 3 days off a week. Okay. I think is like a pretty decent practice. Mm-hmm. So you could do it. So if you have your 7-day week, maybe you microdose 3 or 4 of those days, and then the other days you take off. And I think that's important because you don't want to develop a dependency. If you can help it, you don't want to develop a dependency, and then it also allows your body to kind of like go back to baseline so that you kind of feel it fully the next time you do it. Whereas if you're just going from one microdose to the next, you're like, what is my baseline even, you know? So that would be my recommendation there.
And then whilst you're in a cycle of microdosing, how often would you sort of do a regular dose? How often would you just...
and by regular dose, I'm assuming you mean like have like a full psychedelic experience.
Yeah.
And with that, it's just important, like in my opinion, it's important to do that on an empty stomach, because I just think it's you integrate the medicine so much better. And you don't have to do like some crazy long fast. You could just not eat breakfast. And then, because I personally love it when I have an off day and I'm able to experience it during the day, surrounded by people. It's very important to be surrounded by people you trust, or in a space that you trust and a space that you're comfortable in. That's like very, very important. And it's nice if you can be out in nature. That's like really, really nice. But I could do it in my apartment because I have so many houseplants. I've created like a little microbiome in my apartment. So it kind of, as long as you're surrounded by life and like the lighting is nice, you don't want harsh lighting. Like I can't stand fluorescent lighting. I just don't like it. I like soft lighting, surrounded by life, and then surrounded by people you trust. And then if you're being super duper responsible, you would have a trip sitter. So someone who you trust who's not, who's sober, who can kind of like look after you and attend to your needs. Like if you say you're like, maybe you're really high and you're like, my throat feels like gravel, but you're actually thirsty. And then your trip sitter can be like, oh, you're thirsty, so here's some water type thing. So that's always, I think that's just a good general rule of thumb if you can do it. But I don't want people to put limits on themselves either, right? So I just, I think you can trip by yourself. You just have to be like aware and make sure you have like water around you and just you're in a safe place. I would turn my phone at least on like do not disturb. I would definitely put my phone. I would say don't turn it off entirely because maybe you want to reach out to someone if you want to reach out to someone, because that's another aspect of it. Like when you have like a ceremonial dose, you might have to like work through some difficulties as you come to realizations about yourself. So what the mushrooms are, they will make things known. Anything that's been occluded or anything in the shadow has a tendency to come out, especially as you up the doses. The higher the dose, the less you'll be able to not see. And you just cannot resist. You can't resist it. You just can't resist it, because then that will cause a bad trip if you try it. So what has been occluded will become clear. And sometimes there's memories that will crop up, maybe from childhood, if people have had childhood trauma or something like that. And that can be really hard. So that's why it's nice to either have a trip sitter there, have someone you can reach out to just be like, maybe you need to cry for a little bit, or you need to express something that's like, because it can be like, I want to be real with people, like this sort of work with the higher doses can be quite difficult if you have a lot that you have not faced. It can be quite difficult work. So I think that's important to say. But
all right, that's a good explanation.
But it's important work. I think it's important work, like critical even, I would say.
How important would you say marijuana is in sort of separate? I know separate to mushrooms kind of completely, but how important would you say it is?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. For me, interestingly, lately, I've been less drawn to marijuana, but that's just me personally. I think that marijuana is really helpful for a lot of people, and it can help a lot with like headaches and, if you're feeling under the weather. Personally, for me, like if I have a cold or something, like I definitely want to take a couple bong hits because it just kind of makes you forget that you have a cold for a while. Yeah. But like lately for me, for whatever reason, I have not been as drawn to it. And I don't know if maybe that has to do with like, it's harder to find just like that good quality street weed that I used to be able to find, because now everything in the US is recreational. Arizona is a recreational state. So everything is dispensaries, and it's still good weed. I mean, I'm not going to say that it's not good weed, but it is quite like, it's so like mechanical. I don't know. It has a feeling of commercialization,
like artificial,
now.
like
a little bit.
You get fresh vegetables. This is different, but then you can get the sort of vegetables that you get nowadays, which are just sprayed with all sorts of shit. There's a big difference between the two. It must be the same thing with the weed, then, right?
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. And I do think about that. I think about like what sort of weird shit did they spray on the plants while the buds were growing and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I just think so it's kind of a personal thing with the marijuana. I always say, as a general rule of thumb, like listen to your body and listen to your mind. So like maybe there'll be a chapter of my life when I'm drawn to smoke more again. It might happen. Right now when I smoke, and I still do, I'll take a hit from time to time. Like I'm not, but I just notice that it starts to get me sometimes, what people call paranoia. Like you start to get into like thoughts of like, what if this, what if that? And I think because right now, to be honest with you guys, it's pretty intense here. Like living in the inner city, in the empire right now is very intense. And I have mi amor and mi familia, and I have neighbors that I trust. Thank God. but it's just intense. And when you got helicopters going over your crib while you're trying to record, it's like you don't have time or space to have those like what if thoughts. I just really have to focus on like moving forward and being strong within myself. So I think that's maybe why right now that I've not as called to like smoke weed.
Yeah.
But nothing but love for weed. And I think overall it's way better than alcohol for sure.
Yeah. I felt, since stopping alcohol that, I don't know, when I was drinking, you only really notice it when you've stopped because we are 11 months in now, so we've nearly done the full year. And you feel like a massive weight has just been lifted. But it feels like just drink, even if you're just drinking maybe once a week, you don't realize, but it feels like you're kind of restricting yourself. You're not opening yourself up by always relying on the alcohol instead of, I guess, feeling normal feelings.
Sorry, y'all. I'm doing my little medicine right now for myself. I just didn't want it to make it too loud because it's kind of like
what is that?
What is that?
So this is pretty sacred stuff, and I don't know if I should talk about it right now. Okay. But it's sacred stuff. Sacred dust. It's sacred dust, and it comes from mostly South America.
Okay.
But it's like it's for clarity of thought, and also like calmness. I don't think I should talk about it, but if I will email with you guys about it, if you email me my Proton mail, just because that's a more secure line of communication. Okay. So if you email me on my Proton mail, I will gladly tell you because I think it's actually important. And it kind of corresponds with like some like psychedelic visions that I had when I was younger. A lot of those are becoming more clear now to me. And this particular medicine is part of that, but I want to protect the medicine. So I don't want to say too much about it. Yeah, but it's helping me. It's helping me a lot for sure. It's definitely helping me a lot for sure. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't want to be like, it involves me like going like a really like hard blow air. So I didn't want to just like blow air into the mic. So that's why I muted myself. Just trying to be a little bit respectful over here.
You seem quite calm, so it must be working. You seem like a super
I do
chill
feel
guy.
calm. I do feel calm, brother. I do. I've been doing a lot of like really hard inner work out of kind of necessity, because I have less room for error in my life. And so I've just had to like, I historically have been pretty messy with my life, and I've done like some thoughtless and selfish things. And then I started to like notice that I was like hurting the feelings of mi amor, who's like my lifeline. She's like my lifeline. And so I was like, okay, I really have to like figure out what this is. And so I've been going really deep inside myself and like, for lack of a better term, like exercising my own demons to like realize like, what is this that causes me to like do behaviors that then hurt people that love me? Like, what the fuck is this? And through that process, it's been a lot of like tears and a lot of realizations. But I do feel a lot calmer. I will say I feel a lot calmer because I've come clean. I've admitted all of my past mistakes to her. She's slapped me around. She's Mexicana, so she's fucking bad bitch. And she's slapped me around. She's been like, you fucking asshole. And I'm like, I know I'm an asshole. And she's just like, you fucking bitch. I'm like, I know. But we've gotten through that. And now we're at like a really good place. And it's like, it's nice because now I don't feel like I'm hiding stuff from her. And when I have something that I want to express, like even if it's uncomfortable, I'll just express it. And I'll be like, hey, there's this thing that's going to be uncomfortable, but I feel like I actually cannot lie anymore to her, to anyone, honestly, to anyone. I wouldn't lie to anyone, but especially to her. Like, I feel like that's my neighbor right now. My neighbors, I have mostly good neighbors. I have like, it's like a 5-to-1 ratio of like good neighbors, but I have one neighbor who's a little bit hectic, and he's literally just like banging shit against the wall right now. So I apologize for that.
I don't think it's picking it up on the mic.
Yeah. Oh, right on. That means that's good. I'm glad it didn't pick up on the mic. But yeah, I feel a lot calmer, brothers, and it's like, it's nice. Like I was so tired of sneaking around and being a selfish man. I was just like so fucking tired of it. And so now I'm done with that. And it does feel really good on a personal level. It feels really good.
Yeah.
And just like letting her know, like I've told her, like, you've saved my life. Like she's saved my life. And I've told her that. And it's like, it feels good. It feels nice. And then that's mi familia, because I've lost both my parents in the past year because of the fucking, in my humble opinion, my sister will argue with me about this. My sister will be like, it has nothing to do with the mRNA shots, but I think it does, because they took the mRNA shots and then their health declined and they passed, and it's really painful and sad. And so now it's like mi familia is mi familia with mi amor, and I love them so much. And so it's like, that's also partially why I had to exercise my own demons too, because her mom is a very powerful woman and she can see right through me. And so if I'm trying to, like, if I'm sneaking around or trying to hide something, she's gonna know and she's gonna be angry and she's can be scary. So it's like I can't I got it. And it's like it's kind of nice too, because like I don't even have that desire so much anymore. I don't have that desire. I don't have the desire to sneak around anymore. It's really nice. Sorry, this is getting kind of personal, but it kind of feeds into like the medicine and everything. But
it's good. Do you know when you was on the antidepressants you were on, do you feel like they were restricting you in terms of like a spiritual journey in any way?
Yes, I do actually. Thank you. That's a really good question. That's a very good question. Glad you asked it. And yes, I do. I think that they do. I think that they slightly can. So I also want to say with this too, that I think that we're much more powerful than anything, any external thing. Because like I've had really good friends that their wives have like told them to get the mRNA shots. And then I talk about my feelings about the mRNA shots. And I just want to make clear to them, like, I'm not trying to talk shit right now. It's just that like, this is how I feel about the shots. But I think we're much more powerful. I think we're much more powerful and we have the ability to transmute anything. So I don't want people to start thinking like, oh no, I took this thing and now I'm fucked. It's like, no, I don't. But I will say that I think there's a helicopter going above me right now, guys. I can hear the helicopter. Isn't that nice? Isn't that pleasant? It's so pleasant. It's a fucking helicopter above me.
Fucking helicopter. I can slightly hear it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a helicopter. It'll go away. It's just, I like to pretend that it's an ally. I like to be like, that's my helicopter homie. She's secretly on my side, and she's just checking in on me. She's just like, yo, what's up? This is a good interview with these people. We're not intercepting this.
Like
we're not intercepting this
sent from the heavens.
Yeah, we don't intercept every single communication that you send electronically, and especially when it's overseas. Like, we don't do that. What's up, Kyle? What's good, brother? I hope that you glean something from this. But yeah, I think that it very subtly does affect the spiritual aspect, because it's kind of like a personal sovereignty thing in a way. Like, I don't want to feel like I am dependent on something. And then when I do like utilize a medicine, I want to know exactly where it comes from. Like, I want to know it's a trusted source and I know where it comes from and all that kind of stuff. And with pharmaceuticals, I just didn't have that trust. I had no idea where this pill comes from or what it's made of or what is in there. And I just, especially after the shit show with the jab, I got scared. I was like, fuck, I don't want to be taking something into myself that is not good for me. And it's so crazy now too in the States. I don't know about you guys in the UK, but I think they're putting shit in like the lettuce now too. I have this weird feeling like they're putting shit in the lettuce. Like, because I know Ryan Christian at Last American Vagabond has been talking about this, that they've been like working on putting like mRNA stuff in produce. Wow. And there's this product that has recently emerged out of New York. And I'm not going to name names because I actually have a good friend that actually works for the company. So I'm not going to name names right now because I also don't know for sure. It's just, but when I look at it, it gives me like, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know about it. It weirds me out. And I just think it's really important that we know right now, like where our food is coming from. If we can grow our own food with organic seeds, or if we have like trusted people, or like we know like a farm or something like that. I just think that's important. How's the supply chain in the UK for like organic produce and like meat that's like not fucked with? Like, is there a pretty decent way to get that?
Yeah, we do have farm shops, like quite a few farm shops. If you're in the city, it's quite difficult. But if you're on the outskirts of the city, you're not too far from a farm shop where they sort of look after their own.
But the problem with that is, I think you were talking about it earlier, where they're fucking the farmers at the moment. So the prices are getting raised so high that the normal person can't afford to go and buy from these shops. I think that's about one of the main problems with.
Yeah, it's almost like you're probably talking like 50 to 100% more expensive.
Yeah, I'd be saying closer to 100 at the moment. Yeah,
from a farm shop than from your local supermarket.
Wait, how much more expensive?
Probably like 50 to 100%.
How's the inflation over there? Like, is it super crazy over there too?
Yeah, like my food bill has probably doubled in a year.
Damn.
Things are going.
That's about the same for me too. That's why I've had to literally like consume less.
Yeah, you can only go and literally buy the stuff that you need. You can't buy any. You can't really afford to go and buy extras every time you go into a shop, because you just look at the bill and think, you can't just keep doing that. You have to just go around the shop and literally pick up exactly what you need. You can't really afford to have any luxuries anymore.
Yeah. Can I ask you guys? We got like, seems like we got maybe like 25 minutes left or whatever. Yep. Can I ask you guys some questions about what it's like in the UK? Like, what's like the vibe right now in the UK? Like, do you feel like the UK is being destabilized? How is it with like, is there a lot of like xenophobia and like shit like that happening? Like, what's it like?
So especially with this war in Israel at the moment.
Yeah.
It's wild. I've stopped listening to anything to do with it because I don't know. I feel like it's propaganda on both sides, and they want one side out marching, the other side arguing with them about no pro-Israel, no pro-Palestine, and it's like they're both being played off against each other to cause instability and division. That's how it feels, and it's quite bad in the UK with that, especially around that war. So on the 11th of November, we have a Remembrance Day for the soldiers that died in World War One and Two. So the pro-Palestinian protesters arranged a massive protest in London on the 11th, and that obviously pissed off the people who aren't pro-Palestine.
Right.
They both came out in London, and it all like sort of kicked off. But I think it's one of the biggest protests the UK's ever had that day.
Are you guys aware of some of like the really fucked up shit though that's happening? Like how they cut off the power to Al Shifa Hospital, and like there's like little premature babies that are like, so it's so fucked up how like, you know, the babies at the incubators, that propaganda story at the Gulf War where they had the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador claimed that the Iraqis were taking babies out of incubators, and then it ended up being shown that was just complete bullshit. It was just pure propaganda, and that girl who said that was like the daughter of the Kuwaiti ambassador or something.
Oh shit!
But in reality, right now, because I have Palestinian friends, and Amor and I, we did go to the Palestinian Community Center the other day to support, just to let people know that we love them, because there's this very sad thing where Palestinian people in the US, I don't know, maybe everywhere, it's like they feel like it's like the world doesn't want us to belong or something like that. And so it's like we just wanted to show support just as humans and just be like, hey, like, and also my friend, he's a good brother, like, I love you, man, like, I'm glad you exist, and I want the Palestinians to have a place to exist, because I love the Palestinian people. I also like, you know, I also love all people. So I think that it's really fucked up to like say that somehow that the like Jewish people are identical with the Israeli state, or even that the Israeli people are identical with the Israeli state, just like how I'm not identical with fucking sniffer in chief, fucking corrupt walking corpse demon. Like, that's not me at all. Like, at all. So I don't want people, if that would upset me if people were like, oh, you are somehow identical with this fucking asshole. Like, so anyways, I think it's good to bring it back to the human level. And I do follow this one. The helicopter's not going to like this. Sorry, Kyle. There's this one electronic intifada. It's based out of New York. And they are being censored really hard. But they do give really good information. Information you're not going to see on the mainstream media. And about what's actually going on in Gaza. And I know that this is a fact. Like, this is not speculation. This is a fact. They cut off power to the Al-Shifa hospital, which is like the main hospital. And so these little premature babies are like literally out of their incubators, and they're literally just trying to keep them alive. And they've been cut off from food and water too. So like, and they say that the smell of death is everywhere because they've run out of pain medication. I mean, it sounds really fucking awful. I can't even imagine. So I just think, like, I do also hear what you're saying, brother, about like how it is being also used as like a destabilization tactic, and it's like a keep people fighting amongst each other. That is definitely true. And then also I will just say that I think that there's also like really, really fucked up shit going on to the actual Palestinian people. And I don't think that there are Hamas bunkers underneath Al-Shifa hospital. From the research that I've done, there's no evidence. There's no evidence that there's actually Hamas bunkers underneath Al-Shifa hospital. And if you think of it from like a guerrilla war, because it's a guerrilla war right now, where you have the literal underground tunnels with the guerrilla fighters, why would they put their resources underneath the hospital? It just doesn't make any sense, because that's one of the most obvious targets to like, you could argue that it would be like, okay, if they're evil people and they're super evil and they just want to use patients and premature babies as human shields. But I personally do not think that. I don't think that they're that evil that they would use premature babies as human shields. I don't think that they have the bunker underneath the hospital, but I don't have a crystal ball. So this is speculation island, but I think that there's like 100 kilometers of tunnels under Gaza.
Oh, wow.
And no, more than that, 1,000 kilometers of tunnels.
Really?
Yes.
Insane.
Yes. That is a fact. And the tunnels go to Egypt, and there's tunnels that go to Sudan, and they're driving around Chinese motorcycles through the tunnels to like get to move shit around. And that, like, so it's hard to know, obviously, because we don't know the real truth. But I just think that it's like, we have to have some respect for the innocent people. Like, because, okay, the premature babies, for example, like the premature babies are innocent. They're innocent, and they deserve a chance to live. And it's just as sad to me that they would be struggling for life. You know, it's very, very sad.
Yeah. And then one thing that sort of spiked my interest with it is as soon as it all started kicking off, a lot of the celebrities, the Hollywood stars, were all in support of Israel at the time it all began. And just with me not knowing anything about it, that's the only first sort of thing I saw. I obviously was a bit like, right, what's actually going on here? Because if they're in support of something and they're speaking about something, more than likely, and speculation island, more than likely it's the opposite, which is true, because they're trying to lead us somewhere else. So that's the sort of first thing off the bat, which I was a bit like, okay, there's more to this than just whatever we're going to hear over the next, I don't know how many months. But,
definitely.
This is a bit of a weird question, but I'm just going to ask it.
I love it.
How close do you think we are to World War III? Because it seems one thing happens here, then something happens over here, something happens over here. All these things are taking place. The sort of the Western Empire seems like it's falling, as we were talking about in the beginning.
Yeah.
Things are looking a bit funky out there. So what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah, man, it's a good question. I think that I do believe in order to answer this question, I do have to say that I'm a very deeply spiritual person, and I believe in miracles. I do. And I've had some things happen to me in my life that I would call miracles. Like I've pretty recently even I've had some pretty miraculous things occur. And so I do believe in miracles, and I think that it's like a miracle that we haven't already started to see bombs being dropped on like Philadelphia and shit. I think we're so much closer than people have any idea or realize. I think there's a lot of restraint, interestingly enough, by groups like Hezbollah is actually showing like a lot of restraint because their people are like wanting them to intervene militarily. They're like, and they have the capabilities, but then they know that if they started to truly, there is fighting happening at the north and Hezbollah soldiers are dying and Israeli soldiers are dying. And that's always tragic. Like it's important to keep that in mind that all these people have families and it's fucking sucks when people lose their lives. But if Hezbollah really wanted to like start sending missiles and stuff like that, and really that would spark what you could only call world wars. It would become a regional conflict, which would bring Iran into the picture. Yemen is already chomping at the bit. The Houthis are like chomping at the bit because I did a whole episode about the Houthis. It's a very interesting group, and their whole like raison, I never can get this word right. The raison d'etre, their reason for being is like they fight oppression. Like that's their whole reason for being. They're like, we're the Houthis and we fight oppression. And they're already like they haven't directly attacked because they don't want to start World War III, but they've been sending messages like, here's a little drone over here, a little missile over here. Like we're fucking ready to roll because the Houthis have managed to fight off Saudi Arabia backed by the US for the past fucking like 8 years or something like that. There's been this like gnarly war happening in Yemen where Saudi Arabia has been wanting to take Yemen for itself, and the Yemeni Houthi resistance has just been like, no, fuck off. But so anyway, I think that we're a lot, and it's dudes in trucks with Kalashnikovs too. I want to say is dudes in trucks with Kalashnikovs are like doing and encrypted. Sorry, Kyle, I'm sorry. Encrypted chat apps, Kalashnikovs, and Toyota trucks, like, and they manage, and now they've got some cheap drones because Iran has some really good drone technology, and Iran is sharing technology with Russia. So there's the cheap drones. But back to answer your question, how close are we to World War III? Very fucking close. And you could even argue, I think, that we're already there, that it's already started, that World War III started on October 7th, whatever that was. I think that it was a complicated thing that happened on October 7th. This is island, but I think that there's an indigenous resistance, the Palestinian resistance, and it's not just Hamas. It's also I think they're called Palestinian Liberation Jihad or something like that. And there's other groups too. So it's not just Hamas. And Hamas is a movement. It has a political wing and a militant wing. People miss that part too. So Hamas, the political wing, got elected because the people of Gaza were just like, we're fucking tired of being so brutalized and we have no other choice but basically armed struggle. And so they're like, they voted for Hamas. But then there's also Palestine, I think the jihadist group in Palestine and other groups too. So I think that there was a genuine resistance that genuinely wanted to get hostages and then use the hostages to get release of prisoners. But then I also think that there was, sorry, Kyle, I think there was fuckery happening with like infiltration there too as well. So I think there was like, I don't even want to say the word. It starts with M. It's an intelligence agency. It's based in Israel. I'm sorry. Just leave me alone. I think you know what I'm talking about. I think there was some infiltration happening, like where there was fuckery with that as well. So that like maybe it was like, so that's why I'm saying like maybe that was the start of World War III, and maybe it was like a plan all along that like we're going to do this thing on October 7. We're going to kill civilians, because intelligence agencies are very capable of killing their own people. We've seen that over time and time and time and time again. I see it all the time. I'm surrounded by fuckery here in the hood. I could tell you some stories. I'm not going to for my safety. It's fucking hectic. Like, intelligence agencies are capable of killing their own people. And so maybe this was like a kicking it off. Like, we're going to kick off this thing that's going to happen. And I hope that it does not escalate into full-blown World War III, because the nuclear devices now are a lot smaller than they used to be, like these tactical nuclear devices. It's not just A bombs and H bombs now. There's like neutron bombs, and there's biological war and chemical war, and like an actual World War III scenario would be a total fucking nightmare for everybody. And I just like, I like my city, you know, like especially the people on the south and west side, mi familia, Mexicana familia, like good people, amazing fucking people. And I don't want to see like neutron bombs dropping on people, you know, because that it would just be horrific. So I have been literally like praying for some sort of miracle that this can somehow be resolved without it escalating to that level. Because to answer your question, man, I think we're so close.
Yeah, that's the worrying thing, right? So is that we need a miracle, because from where like you and I are sat, kind of out of our hands, because the powers that be are so powerful that whatever they want to mess around with, they can go ahead and mess around with, and we can't really do much about that.
Exactly. It sucks. It really sucks. It sucks to feel that like there's these forces so much greater than us, and it seems like it's unfortunately like it seems like there's a very evil cabal of very powerful people that, in my opinion, they practice like dark arts. In my opinion, they practice dark arts, and they are trying. So I think that it's important to talk about, especially in the truth community. Like, a lot of people talk about the one world government and how that's like something we want to avoid.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. I agree with that. I don't want a one world government because that terrifies me. The idea of like a technocratic panopticon one global governance structure is fucking scary, especially with people like Klaus fucking Schwab, mini Nazi me, fucking Klaus Schwab, like running the show. Like, I don't want that. But at the same time, we are one global family. And like, I'm not trying to be like woo right now. It's just a fact that like we truly are one global family of humans. So it's like, how can we don't want a one world government, because I think, in my opinion, government is kind of the problem, especially like how we've been subjected to it through the eons, dating all the way back to the fucking pharaohs and shit. But we do want a one world family, to where like I can like call up my homie in Yemen and be like, hey, like, what's cracking? Like, you know, and we can just have that free exchange. I know that sounds very, very maybe far-fetched or dreamer, like, you know, to a lot of people, but it's like I'm just kind of clinging to my dreams, because otherwise we are talking like World War III situation. And it's just going to be so much suffering, like innocent people suffering, and like beautiful people. And it's just like, is sad. I don't like it when beautiful, innocent people suffer for no reason. It's like really sad.
There is the, I don't mean to, if this is going to burst any bubble of hope, but there was a conspiracy, right, that, you know, the Nazis from Nazi Germany in World War II, that they actually are still around today, and they're the ones that are controlling the world. If you look at people like Klaus Schwab, they've actually come from Nazi Germany, and they've been trying to run this one world government since then, and they've had all this time, and they are a lot further ahead than like we can work out, and they are pulling more of the strings. And what we're seeing today is actually still being controlled by them from Nazi Germany.
Also, George Soros, isn't he confirmed Nazi?
Is he confirmed?
I think it's confirmed that he's a Nazi, right? Or was he? Yeah, I think so.
I think I did hear that. Yeah, that's crazy, because he's the guy that runs Black BLM.
Or he funded. Yeah, right. Isn't that so ironic and fucked up? And I want to say too, because like if people go back in my timeline way back in the day for my podcast, they'll see that like I did attend Black Lives Matter rallies. And I just want to specify that the reason why I attended those rallies is because I was supporting my friends who get brutalized by the police. And like, I will say that Arizona police are a lot better than Chicago police. Like Chicago police will just like roll up and punch you in the face and spit in your eye and tell you to fuck off. And then they'll lie on the report and say that you did it. And then you'll go to court and you'll be like, this cop punched me in the face. And they'll be like, oh, the report says you actually punched the cop, which I had that happen when I got arrested for the marijuana in Chicago. I had that pretty much happen. Like they said that I resisted arrest. And I was like, I just said that I didn't consent to the search because I thought that that was what I was supposed to do to like assert my rights. But they viewed me asserting my rights as me resisting arrest. And so they made a big headache and I had to pay all this money and it fucking sucked. And so I will give a shout out. I will say that Phoenix police, in my experience, have been much more respectful than Chicago police. But at the same time, I have friends that have been brutalized by the police. And so I was just trying to like show support for my friends who have been brutalized. But now I see that I was in a way manipulated. I can admit that now. I can admit that, like that there was some manipulation there. And it was used. It was like the thing happened and then it was like seized by these Soros figures and stuff to like further destabilize the situation. So that's where the fuckery is so clever. Like it's evil, but it's evil genius. There's a lot of evil genius. Yeah.
Well, there was a lot of different channels that BLM was one of them. Loads of people jumped on it because your first instinct is to be like, have respect for these people, and they pull at your heartstrings. So everyone jumps on it. Like,
everyone does it with like the greatest intentions at heart.
Yeah,
for a good cause. Like the whole climate change agenda is for a good cause. The BLM agenda was for a good cause, but it feels like there's sinister motives behind it for the people who are funding these movements. And
yeah, you guys are doing really good work to shine light on that because that's exactly what is happening. And the hope is that if more and more people can become aware of that, then we can kind of like wake up from this hypnosis that we've been under.
Yeah.
And we can really like, then we can actually come together in a way that's like productive. And just so Kyle knows, I'm not talking about anything involving anything. I believe in like, we don't need to spill a drop of blood. Like I really truly believe that we don't need to spill a drop of blood because we can come together in communities around like regenerative farming and like just being good people and bringing up kids in like a community setting, like, you know, kind of going back to the old school. So it's not so hard for like, because right now in the States, and it sounds like in the UK too, like it's so expensive to have kids. It's like so expensive. And so people don't really want to have kids because they're like, we can't even afford it. But if we had like communities that were centered around regenerative farming and being good people, then we could bring up kids in like a community setting. And that's kind of where I genuinely see the hope. And genuinely, at least in the States, I do see a lot of like activity around that. Like a lot of my friends and my connections through the podcast are setting up these types of things where it's like regenerative farms. You know, we don't have to call them, because let's not even call them communes, right? Let's reinvent the idea. Let's just call it a community of people where we still respect our individualism and we're coming together. And it's like, but we have support, you know, so that like if you're not just like a single mom trying to fucking survive and raise a kid and put food on the table, and it's just like it's so difficult, especially with inflation, then rather than that, you would be like a mom who has a kid, and then the community can help like support the kid, and you know, maybe we can even share some romance and some laughs along the way if we're lucky, you know, like maybe it could be quite pleasant. And it doesn't have to be like, it doesn't have to be sacrificing individual rights. I think that's important. Like respect individual rights, respect individual sovereignty. Like I think that's really important.
Yeah, we need to look at building a community around us instead of looking to help us solve our problems, instead of looking looking at the government for our answers and to solve our issues. Because I feel like once we look at the government, that's where more shit happens and more shit goes wrong.
Yeah.
That's very well put. That's very well put. I can't agree more, because especially when the government is like actively fighting against you and trying to poison you too. It's like an abusive relationship at that point then.
Right.
Like, so we have to free ourselves from the abusive relationship. And just, I think, it's a cliche, but it's true. Like, one pretty good strategy for dealing with a bully is just kind of ignore the bully and don't respond to their, when they do something you have to defend yourself. So you have to defend yourself. You have to defend your loved ones. So certainly do that. Defend yourself, defend your loved ones. But say the bully like spits on the ground in front of your face, like, just ignore it rather than respond, because then that's going to provoke another response and then another response. And when we're dealing with a completely psychotic death cult, which is what it is, in my humble opinion, which is what the quote government is, psychotic death cult, they're just going to continue to like make it more and more fun. Like, they spit on the ground and then you say like, fuck you. And then they drop white phosphorus on you and then you're dead. So it's like, okay, maybe don't say fuck you. And then maybe they won't drop white phosphorus on you. I don't know. It's a hectic situation. It's very hectic. It's very hectic. But I think that like conversations like these are critical, and I really admire you guys for like doing this work. And it seems like I really appreciate your perspective, because you're able to like bring these ideas together in a way that is nuanced without trying to like alienate. And that's, I'm trying to do the same thing over here as well. Like, I'm not trying to alienate anybody, and I again, like, trying to keep that open mind and avoid that echo chamber. But I do like, I'm glad we talked about the border, just because it's so personal now, because it's mi familia. So it's like, we need that nuance of understanding, so that we don't like start scapegoating groups of people, because that's not, I think it's genuinely counterproductive too.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in a what I would say is a time of the Great Awakening. Like, so the government and the powers that be are doing so much shit. Like, you've got no choice but to wake up and actually think, stop poking me. Like, I don't like to be poked by the government. So I think we're in this time where it is literally a great awakening, but we just need to remember to stay resilient, because they are going to keep poking us. They are going to keep spitting in front of our feet. And it's about building that resilience with yourself to say, no, I know what you're doing. Like, it doesn't faze me. You're not going to spit on me. And it's just having that resilience to say, I understand what you're doing and I don't give a fuck. Like, I've got better things to do over here. So carry on doing whatever you want to do over there. I'm going over here with everyone else that's waking up. And sooner or later, the more they keep throwing at us, more and more people are going to wake up. And then these communities are going to evolve, and they're going to be more communities, and they're going to sort of merge together, and there's going to be a much, much happier place in the near future. So I think, we could be scared that World War III is right there, but we could see it as a blessing. Like, they can keep chucking stuff at us, and that many people wake up, it just stops, and they physically can't do anything else because they've all moved on past it.
Yes, that's a really good way of putting it. Another way of putting it is like, if we keep on turning up the light, we keep on turning up the dial on the light, then there's fewer shadows and fewer dark corners and fewer dusty areas to hide. So like, if you have like, say there's like a apartment that's infested with cockroaches, the cockroaches don't like being shined a light on. So you turn a little bit of light on, then they scurry and find shadows. You turn a little bit more light on, they scurry and find more shadows. But if you just turn up the light all the way and there's no more shadows for them to hide in, then you can just exterminate, And I'm not talking, Kyle, I'm not talking about extermination, Kyle. I'm not. It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor. But yeah, I think that is like, there's a lot of hope in that. There is like, and you might be right in fact, I have an elder who helps me with medicine stuff, and she feels the same way as you. She's like, it's all good. She said, it's all good, love, but it just might be shadowy for a while. That's what she said. So, yeah. So I think, maybe you might be onto something.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been amazing.
Yeah, I always love finishing.
This has been amazing.
On a positive note.
Yeah.
Wait, what was that? What did you say?
I always love to finish a podcast with a positive note, a positive message.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we managed to do it. Which is nice. And we covered a lot of really good ground, and I definitely want to connect with you all again.
100%. I think we should do this again. Yeah.
Yeah. And we could just do another swapcast, or,
Yeah, let's go for it again. Well, I'm just going to sign off from this. So thanks everyone for listening.
Cheers, guys.
Peace.